First, I'd like to introduce Mr. Mamuka Andguladze, who is a lecturer at Caucasus University on the subjects of media and union law, and he has run the media project at Transparency International Georgia since 2017. So, Mr. Andguladze, I'm very happy to have you here, and I'm looking forward to hearing more from you.
Oh, thank you very much, Lena. I would like to, can you hear me, yeah?
Yes.
Yeah, great. So I would like to greet to you and to your colleagues and to my friends. Due to the current situation and coronavirus crisis, so you see in which conditions we are now. I'm glad that still you managed to organize this meeting, and we have a possibility to express our opinion, plus to provide some basic information what's going on in our region and especially in the country. So just briefly, despite the fact there is an ongoing election campaign in Georgia, but the region is now marked by the violent, brutal war which takes place not far from Georgia, as a conflict in Nagorno-Karabakh. And this is, of course, definitely has an impact on Georgia, including on media coverage. Two topics, major topics are dominant right now in Georgia. This is one, the election campaign, what's happening, what kind of statements are doing, what kind of meetings, and etc. And plus, as a conflict in the region. Plus, Georgia is a multinational state, which are having citizens with different ethnic background, including Armenian, in Azerbaijan, ethnical, and it's a multinational country. So Georgian media environment remains to be very politicized and polarized. Unfortunately, the political parties who are having direct, having influence over influence on media outlets, influencing at the same time on media coverage. Unfortunately, the number of the cases when the journalists have been attacked while performing their professional duty has been increased. In the last 2-3 weeks, there were 4 or 5 cases when the journalists have been harassed, intimidated, and even beaten. As the reaction from the side of the government is they started the investigations, but unfortunately there is less skeptical that the results of the investigation will be provided. Meanwhile, the local organization which are conducting the monitoring of media outlets have published the first result of monitoring, showing that Georgia remains politicized and polarized, which means that media outlets are providing the biased coverage depending on the affiliations with political parties. And unfortunately, the public service broadcaster, which is designed to be impartial and providing pluralistic coverage of the elections, remains still problematic. The situation with regard to the current crisis has dramatically worsened in Georgia. In April, we had like 45 or 50 cases when the country was locked down. Now, just 2-3 minutes ago, they have announced that over 1,000 people have been infected, and it's about 1 week, and we're having the number of the infected persons over 1,000. Definitely, this has influence on debates, on public debates by the politicians, and on media coverage as well. Namely, the media outlets who are loyal to the ruling party, stating that it's quite normal, and this is happening in all countries as well. And media outlets who are having like critical editorial policy towards the government and complaining government for everything. So this corona crisis topics plus the debate discussion relating to the conflict, the war, which unfortunately taken place not far from Georgia. Generally, the war is terrible, but we, besides Armenia and Azerbaijan, will have a direct impact on us. It will have it's a subject also in discussion. But one of the worst and one of the things which is worrisome thing, which is worries most, is because of these two topics, there is a less debate about in media about the topics, about the projects, about the promises of the parties. It's more general debate rather than deep analysis. And media is unfortunately, yes, they should be concentrated on these two major issues, but there are other issues as well. So my concern is a pluralistic environment. We do not have a pluralistic coverage besides these two major topics, which should be dominant definitely, because it affects on our health, it affects on the rights, on our lives, and the lives of our neighbors, and etc. But at the same time, there are other issues which would be definitely discussed by the media outlets, whether the projects presented by the political parties are relevant, realistic, and etc. And plus issues related to social life, not social life, so the living conditions of the people. Unfortunately, some media outlets using this as the poverty as a pretext to blame for everything the government, but at the same time, the ruling party, the media outlets loyal to the ruling party are trying not to, not they're realizing and acknowledging the fact that there is a social problems in Georgia, but trying to cover with other issues. So again, this politicized environment has an impact on media outlets. The journalists in some cases have been attacked, harassed, even beaten, and all is related with the election campaign. And this conflict, the war in Nagorno-Karabakh, remains a hot topic in Georgia and is widely covered. So these are these major issues which are happening right now in Georgia. Elections are taking place, scheduled to take place on 31st of October. And some of the media outlets and journalists started discussing whether we have to postpone the elections in order to, because without election campaign, without meeting with the voters, without organizing rally, there are no election campaigns. And just recently, there was a huge opposition rally in one of the Georgian cities, and people were not observing the distance requirement, not wearing the masks. Of course, this will contribute to the increase of the number of infected persons. And less than 2 weeks are left till the elections, but yesterday, today, and probably the next few days, the discussion whether the election should be postponed will be even more louder, especially in media, depending on the situation. But I don't see that situation will be improved very soon without a little bit more restrictive approach by the government. So we are not in a quite easy situation right now. But we are hoping that media will to fulfill its position to be watchdog. So this is for me is a crucial point. The media should try to be and to remain watchdog. It's not easy because the journalists are also in difficult situations. There are several cases when the journalists have been infected, and they're also putting their lives and their health at risk while carrying out the functions as a watchdog. So I would like to apologize that I will not remain long during this discussion. And should your colleague or you or other participants having questions, I would be more than happy to answer right now in order to avoid, because we are traveling and this internet connection is okay, but probably will have some problems. That's why, should you have any questions, remarks, or topics to be discussed, I'm listening.
Yes, thank you very much for your words, Mr. Andguladze. Does anyone have any questions for our keynote speaker? You can also write them into the chat or ask him directly because he's still here. There's one question from our participant, Alina Austamian. She's writing, we know that Georgia, probably the government, supports Azerbaijan. How does this position of the authorities reflect on the coverage of the events in Abzak? Are Georgian media objective on this issue? I'm now also reading this question. So we know that Georgia supports Azerbaijan. So
I don't know whether the Georgian government supports any party in this conflict. We are having controversial reports. Even before the war started, there were some media reports that it's actually there was a courage and media news from Azerbaijan blaming Georgia to allowing military equipment to pass Georgia and from Serbia, which went to Armenia. So my personal opinion is Georgia government is trying to be neutral, and it's a huge tragedy. And I remember I was a child when the war started, and we had also the war, but something like that, the scale of the war has dramatically increased, and the number of the persons are probably very high. And I hope that the war will end as soon as possible, and the agreement which they reach in Moscow about the truce will be observed. We are having media outlets which, that's why this politicized media environment is quite problematic in every sense. In such situation, when you're not supporting any side, and plus we should not support any side, besides that we are neighbors, in addition, we are having also Georgian citizens with Armenian and Azerbaijan background. That's why we should have a good discussion and to avoid that somehow we will be involved in this conflict. So first, the war should stop, and plus at the same time we should also avoid the internal conflict as well. And it's not easy. It's not easy, and there are we should be very, I mean, the authorities and the government media outlets should be very careful while carrying the issues in order to avoid an impression that we are somehow supporting any or other party. I know the country which actually supports both in a way that fools the conflict. Let's look at Russia, what's happening, what kind of steps the Russian has undertaken so far, and I don't think that it's playing the positive role, but it's my personal opinion anyway. But at least the statements which are made by the Georgian government, it's directed towards the neutrality, to stay neutral, and plus there was some fake news from both sides, namely the Georgians either sending the weapons to Armenian or to Azerbaijan, and even ambassadors have made announcements that it's not true. But of course, there are people in the country who are trying to drag us into the conflict as well. But once again, the primary goal is the war should stop, sit on the table of negotiation to avoid any further escalation, because not only military soldiers are dying, who are people who are also having families and friends, but also civilian citizens as well. And the videos and the picture we see, so we saw in the last 2 or 3 weeks every day, it's horrific and tragic, and it's heartbreaking.
Thank you very much. There's one more question from our participant, Yuri Saliniak. Sorry if I mispronounced the names.
Regarding Russian factor in Georgia media market. So according to the surveys, the television is a major source of information on political affairs, and the televisions are having it's like major source of forming the public opinion. The dominant media outlets are not under Russian influence. They are affiliated with the ruling party or the major opposition party. And regarding the pro-Russian media, of course, we are subject of propaganda attack, of Russian propaganda, but mostly it is disseminated through social media, online media, and of course, individual by the persons or institutions. We have so-called pro-Russian television in Georgia, but it's the rating, the trust towards the media outlets is very low. So which means they do not play on the Georgian media market. But besides the language barrier, Georgians, especially the regions which are minority populated, of course, are consuming mostly Russian language media outlets, but mostly we are consuming Georgian language media outlets, and the messages and narratives of pro-Russian or anti-Western mostly dominated in Georgian language. But The Russia is a factor on the Georgian market. I mean, according to the Georgian legislation, they're not allowed to own broadcasters. Broadcasters remains a major source of information in political affairs, but it's not a reason to be calm, because on social media, on daily basis, we see a flow of fake news or use of hate speech directed against Georgia, against anti-NATO, anti-Americanism, and anti-Turkey as well.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mamuka Andguladze, for keeping us informed. Although you're on the road, so I feel like this was wonderful. And yes, if there are no more questions, I think we're...
Once again, thank you very much. And sorry that I will not be able the whole day to stay online. And wishing the organizers and participants a nice working day and environment as a whole week. Unfortunately, we are not in one of the beautiful cities of the world, in Berlin, but I hope that next year we will have a chance to meet personally and speak normally, not like this, but hoping we will stay, and wishing all of you health and stay in touch.
Thank you. We wish you the same, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.